welcome everyone to the final episode of 2024 of Tree Actions, the Human Forestry Podcast.
Exactly.
And we're actually together today in the same location. Tony's in our house here in Alberta. We just had we're doing some business and wearing the shirt from the event we just had, Rigatron.
Got my hat right here going on.
You got Rigatron.
It is the first time we've done one like in the same room.
It is.
Really? 2 years and take it. And we're really, because it is like a really close to the 2 years, because it was this time 2 years ago. It was just that because we started like, I think the first one we put out was the very end of December.
Was it?
Yeah.
I thought it was in January, but maybe.
But it was right in there. So it is a true, not just a calendar year, but
a true
a fiscal year, I guess you'd say, which lines up with a calendar.
And it's the season. We we've got the theme going, and we've got the fire. I think you can just spruce up a little bit there.
And we got Rocky.
And we got Rocky. So if the camera goes flying or you hear whacking noises, it's
that's just Rocky.
But I think he'll probably
so.
But we've had 50-some guests.
50, yeah, I want to say 53, 54-ish by the time you all hear this.
Wow. And, when we started this, I never thought, well, you don't know what you don't know, right? But it's been fun. We've enjoyed it. I know those of you that have been listening, thanks for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed as much as we've enjoyed doing them.
Yeah, I can't thank the people that have joined us on Patreon enough, to give us some support financially. It's great help. I mean, doing this doesn't cost a lot, but it's not free. Yep. And everything's very appreciative about that. And that was something we did different last year. Different from the first year was open that up because I realized that, we talked about it, like people want to help. People want to be a part of it. And, I want people to be a part of it, to have that ability if they want to give a couple nickels or whatever it is. And I'm very appreciative to all of those and the donations they give. And we release the episodes always release on a Wednesday, but they go out 1 week early to the Patreon members.
Right.
And then the next week they're released for free. And it's not, I always want the podcast to be free, but if you're gonna support us, you get it a little bit earlier. And then we do have
a few perks that we're
And there's the back end.
One.
Well, there's some back end stuff that we've put on for Patreon members.
Right.
There's the ability to. I personally don't interact on social media very much at all. It's a personal preference of mine. But the Patreons are closed, and I do interact on that. So if somebody comments on that's a direct line to both of us that we could comment, and the rest of you all. So it's neat. I appreciate that. It's a lot of fun to put that together.
On the topic of social media, I want to let everyone know we do use video when we do the episodes. Those of you who have been on the show know that, but we don't use the video in the podcast. The podcast will remain so far to be an audio only podcast. But I have had some people be confused this past year because we started the Instagram Tree Actions page as a way to just help people link to it and to find us. So now I usually post them on there, and I have forgotten to put the link to the Tree Actions podcast, and people think, where's the rest of it? And we use a very short video clip only on the Instagram page. So while we have the whole thing recorded, we never have ever published an entire video of an interview. So it is an audio only podcast that we introduced every couple weeks with a video. So ironic. Right. And I'm going to be better at putting the link in the video itself so that it's easy to follow. And on that note, as of this past year, you can find us on any podcast app, I believe.
Yeah, all the major ones were on there, listed on there. When we first started out, I had the app kind of unlisted. I think the first year we wanted it to grow organically through word of mouth.
That's right.
And then I realized that maybe we'd be limiting it a little bit and make it just a little bit easier to find. So we listed it, so it's now listed on all the major ones. You should be able to find it. And the website, you can go to treeactions.fm.com, I believe. So it's on the website as well, too.
I think Riverside's in there. You have to put Riverside.
No, it's Transistor FM.
Oh, Transistor.
Right. It'll be on the page and on there, too.
But it's not too easy. It's pretty easy to find these days. Yep. But I wanted to just make that note of clarification. Now, this one, we're not sure if we're going to use the video for this. And if you're watching the video now, well, then we did decide to use it. But,
now you know.
But we will use the audio. I think what I like about our show, if I'm going to toot our own horn or whatever, is I like that the format we have. We've had some people wish we did a little more background introductions, but we just kind of pick up with the question. Your first memory of connecting with trees, or where you felt the connection to trees. And we kind of like the way it just kind of flows from there.
Yeah.
So far, we're still going to stick with that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing an introduction, and I try and add into the show notes a little bit about the people. And if guests want to give us a bio, I'm certainly fine to publish that and promote the things that they might be doing. But yeah, I'm with Dwayne. I kind of like the organic way that it sort of comes together. We joke, we call it the podcast that's so disorganized it repeats, which is fine. I like it. I think one of the things that I really have learned to enjoy that I enjoy doing it, because I edit the podcast and I'll often put that off for a couple of weeks and then go back. It's a lot like just sort of eavesdropping or listening in on somebody's conversation, and I think it's fun. And I think that if we had a real formal introduction to people, it might lose that a little bit. And I kind of equate it to, it's sort of like when you start a new book or something, or watching a movie, and you're not quite sure what the main character is in the whole, and you slowly get that backstory over time, and I kind of enjoy that aspect of it. Plus, quite honestly, it would require us to do more pre-work and be a little more organized than we actually are. I love the project, but you have to limit things, and I just like the way the story develops, and I like it just basically. You all as listeners it's sort of like sitting next to someone at a table in a restaurant, just kind of dropping in on that conversation, and I like that aspect of it.
Yeah, I do too. I find it kind of organic. What I find interesting, I think particularly when we had Mark Burkett. Sorry, Mark, you say nobody can pronounce it. So the Fitz and Fiver Mark on the show, and we didn't talk about splicing.
Right. Yeah. Right. We're talking with probably one of the best slicers in the industry. We didn't say a word about splicing.
Not a word.
That's fine.
I found that quite hilarious. And that was one episode that sticks out of my mind when he talked about shadow mentors. That was a term I hadn't heard of before, and I found it very interesting. It's something that stuck with me. One interview that stuck with me. Oh, every one of them. There's a human element and a story in all of them that I always, reminisce on or think on afterwards, and I really appreciate people willing to share their memories and their origins in tree care and trees, particularly. And it's funny how, well, maybe it's not funny, how most people go back to a childhood experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's a select community because most of them are arborists or involved in the tree some time. But, no, and I think, I like that aspect of it. One of the lessons that I've learned over the last 2 years of doing it is when we started to do the podcast, we were going to do it, I wanted to train myself to listen to hear as opposed to listen to respond. Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of times I don't add in a lot into the conversations or when I do come in, but a lot of that is just me listening to hear as opposed to listen to respond, and it's been good, and I've been able to relay that skill, I guess you'd say, into other aspects. And I think sometimes people look at me and think maybe I'm a little dim-witted and slow, but I'm really just processing at the same time, so I don't mind. But it's been good, and I've enjoyed that aspect as a personal growth aspect, and then just of course the conversations. I mean, I've met new people, new arborists that I've never met before. I've had conversations with people I've known for 30 plus years, but heard aspects of their story that I had never heard before. Yeah. Or I'd heard stories told by the people that were there that I'd only heard versions of from somebody else, and I get to hear it from them. And it's really made me realize that as a trainer, really my job is to tell stories. Some days that story's about safe chainsaw operation, and other days that story's about tree climbing, and then some days that story's about, I don't know, how to try to be a better person and live a good life. Mm-hmm. It's really the ability to have the opportunity to talk to the people that we've talked to, the guests we've talked to, and to record their stories and save it, and then be able to share it is really is priceless. I couldn't ask for more, actually.
Yeah, it's been good. It's a challenge for me. It's an honorable endeavor and a discipline, a practice of discipline to learn to listen, and not just listen, but listen in presence. To listen and hear, to not be in your own mind thinking about what either your response would be, as you said, or what you might be having for dinner or something, but to stay in that conversation. And that for at least for me requires some discipline, and I think it's you mentioned that before, and I always gives me pause to practice more of that myself.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Like I said, just the skill of having the conversation and learning is I see the aspects of it. The physical skill of doing a podcast reverberate through, and I'm fortunate because I'm there for the actual podcast, and then a couple weeks later I get to edit it again, and I don't see. They'll all understand. I cut very, very little out. I'll take a couple dog noises out here and there. Just saying. I cut very, very little out. Maybe some longer pauses. We occasionally have technical problems where people cut off, and I take that out just so the story flows. But I don't edit heavy at all. Very, very little comes out. Like I said, our recording time seems 75 to 90 minutes. And then when I'm done editing, it's a minute or two shorter. Yeah. At the most. I don't really take very much all out. I don't have to. There's nothing. The stories happen the way they're supposed to happen, and really what comes out is the very technical stuff. Like if someone drops off and we got to wait for them to sign back on, and I take away "Are you still there? Are you still there? Can you hear me?" I take that out. Nobody wants to listen to that.
Right.
But other than that, I don't take them out. I don't edit heavy. There's no need to. The story happens, and it's good the way it happens.
I was wondering. I don't know if I remember one guest, Jack Phillips. He flipped the script on it. So he was the first one. I think the only person that done it and asked us the question. I don't know if he asked us both, but what is? I don't even know if I've heard your first experience or connection when you felt you really connected with trees.
I don't know. We ask the question all the time, and I don't think I have one specific memory, with trees. Growing up, being second generation, the podcast has made me realize how, when I was growing up as before preteen and then a teenager, my dad was very big into Boy Scouts. I have two older brothers. We're all Eagle Scouts. But it was never like, hey, that tree over there. It was that red maple or that red oak. It was always very specific. I never really had a world where it was just like a tree. I don't have anything specific when it first started. I have the childhood memories maybe of falling out of trees, but I don't think they were impactful. I equate it really back to when I can vividly remember when I decided that I would come back into arboriculture as a career. And I was probably 26, 27 years old. Didn't want to do arboriculture. Was doing it here and there because my brother needed help, and it was something I could do. And I was getting real close to graduating from university with my degree in philosophy. And then at some point, you got to make a choice in life. And my brother needed help, and he offered me a job, and I took it. But I remember consciously making that decision. And now I often think back, why did I make that decision? And then I think, if you'd asked me then or 10 years ago, the reasons would be different than I would answer now. But now I think the reasons are I needed a tribe. I needed a group of people to relate to, something bigger than family. I could never have a job where you just went and punched a widget, or being outside has been important to me. At that point in my life, I needed a job that made me very physically tired at the end of the day to keep me from going down other paths that might not have been as helpful. As hard work all day. I needed to distract myself. I needed those things, and tree work offered me all of that. So I don't have a specific, very early memory of trees, but I do remember when I decided to be an arborist as a career.
You grew up in it, so it was sort of all around you, right?
Yeah, it was there. And I tell people all the time when we do our training and our Earn the Right speech, I tried actively not to be an arborist. I tried to get as far away from it as I could. Not that I hated it, just, I don't know. I just wanted maybe something. I didn't know what I wanted to do, So, I don't, like I said, I don't have a lot of childhood memories left, but I do remember that as a young adult going, well, you know, you got to do something with life, or you know, you got to stand for something, or you'll fall for anything. And I decided that arboriculture would be where I would devote my time and energy to become, you know, a professional. And I didn't know it would end up me sitting here over 30 years later doing a podcast about tree work. But I did know that, well, you know, this is what I'm going to do for a while. I'm going to settle into this. And a lot of it was because of that community and the nature of the work. And it's that, I think I've talked about it before, you know, it was as close, the community and the sense of that hive around it was very close to what I had in the Army. Mm-hmm. And in that point in my life, I was missing that. And I needed to replace it to an extent without going back into the service, because I didn't really want to do that. So, yeah.
We've had I know one other person that had a similar experience. You know, I think for myself, as I ask that question and think about it, you know, I always remember being, you know, I grew up on a farm in the shelter belt and playing in the trees and tree forts, and I met, you know, when I really think my first real memory was falling, and I was hanging on a branch, swinging on it, a low branch that broke, and I fell and landed on I guess my butt or my tailbone or something. I remember it really hurt. There's two things about it. I was in a tree, and I remember it was the first time I really felt like I'd hurt myself, where I thought maybe I was damaged. And I was like 2 or 3. But I remember it, I still remember the feeling of it, the feeling of the, you know, the fall and the pain of it, and wondering if I really damaged something. And it's really vivid, but it's interesting that it's connected to a tree. Mm-hmm. And when I went to university and got put on the grounds crew and out in the tree nursery, even there, but I learned the Latin names of trees for the first time. I learned what they were. Unlike yourself, I didn't know a spruce from a pine. Mm. And, you know, just by circumstance, that kind of kept, you know, people found out I had this experience with these people. They were kind of sort of well known in the industry. These guys these gentlemen I worked with the nursery that were, you know, 20, 30-year veteran nurserymen. So there was really good training I received there just by working there. And then I'd go somewhere else and say, oh, you worked with those guys? And I remember I got a job at a golf course, just being the dirt, mowing the grass outside the fence. Like I wasn't even on the course. And I was mowing around the clubhouse, and I was supposed to run the back side of the putting green. And there was this branch from this Russian olive that I only knew as Elaeagnus angustifolia. And it was dead, and I had pruned a bunch of them at the nursery. And I never even thought anything of it. I was always a bit self-directive that way. And I went to the shed, found a saw, and it was actually a pruning saw. And I pruned it. I pruned the dead branch off, and I pruned a couple others, and I cleaned them up, and never thought anything of it. Next day, I got called into the office of the superintendent, and he's like, "Were you out? Did you prune that tree by the green, the putting green?" And then I realized, oh, maybe I'm in trouble. I said, "Yeah, I did." He said, "Because like what you didn't ask or nothing, and some of the members are very concerned. But what, like, who are you qualified, and did you hurt the tree?" And then I just told him what I had done, and he hadn't delved in. And later that day, he said, "I've got to talk to you again." So I thought I was in trouble, but come to find out, he takes me to the back of the shop, and there's a cart there, golf cart with a wagon, all dust. It hadn't been used well. They didn't have a golf course horticulturist for a while. And because of the experience, I went literally in 2 days. I went from the lowest part on the course to here's a course credit card. You can go to the garden center. You can buy. We'd like some manuals. He took me around the course. I'd like something put here. I'd like some trees planted here. And all of a sudden, I was talking with the super every morning. I'm in the garden, and all the other guys in the golf course are like, "Who the heck is this guy?" And it was just circumstance. And I loved it. And that kind of thing followed me until I ended up in college. And ended up teaching. But I remember the first time it was 88 in Calgary, 88 or 89, and I got introduced to the competition. And I was still wrestling competitively at the time in university. And it was, I knew that my wrestling career was fading out. I wasn't going to go back to university. I was in college now. The college didn't have a team. I was coaching wrestling. But now here, this was an event. This was something I could compete in. And, and I competed on a national level, and this had a national and a world potential. So I got really focused on the comps from then on. And That's probably where the love of climbing started. But yeah, I think everybody must experience as a climber that time when you're sitting up in a tree and you realize you're getting paid to do this, and there's just something about it that's hard to explain. That feeling of
I love teaching climbing courses to students that have never climbed. Like I teach a class at Longwood Gardens, and it's for their professional horticultural program. And we do climbing, and they're not. Some of them, I've had students that have decided to go down the arboricultural path, but most of them don't. And for most of them, it's the first time they've ever experienced like climbing a tree, like as an arborist with a rope, beyond like the tree in your backyard. And I always love teaching those courses because for a little bit of time, I get a brief glimpse of what it was. I'll never know what it's like to climb a tree for the first time again. I can remember it. And I can remember even from work, it'd be like, you'd be up working and everything was, and literally they'd be like, Tony, come on down. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll be down for lunch in a minute. They're like, no, it's 4:00. It's time to go home. And you'd be like, wow, I remember. You get in that flow state. And when you teach new climbers I can still get a little glimpse of that, and I love that feeling. I'm a little bit envious sometimes. It's like I'll never climb a tree again for the first time, right. But when I teach somebody in that, and then you can sort of relate to them how it's like it's just a different viewpoint from a tree that they've never had, and to give somebody that gift. Even when my daughter Maggie was young, and I remember there was a white pine tree at my buddy's house, and it's maybe 40, 45 feet, not big, and it had a nest in the top of it. It was a crow nest. And my daughter Maggie was, 6 or 7, and she's like, Dad, what's in that nest? And I'm like, I don't know. Want to go look? She's like, yeah. We climbed up there, and just to see her do that, and it was fun, and to see that, to be able to share that perspective, because I think as an arborist and someone that's climbed a lot of trees for a lot of years, you lose that joy, that sense. So when you get to teach those. And sometimes even on the podcast, just hearing people talk about their first experiences as climbing, as arborists, and it's just, you can kind of relive that. And I remember, I guess it was the first season when we talked with Wenda, and how she decided she's going to be an arborist. And she's just there, and she's like, yeah, this is it. Yeah. Like, just, I'm here.
She had that epiphany, that moment. Right. She just knew it. And then I also find it interesting, asking people about their first setup. The first rope. Like I was after 3-strand, but there was no specific. There were 16 strands, but there's a lot of marine braids, double braids. My first rope was a double braid marine line. It was a decent rope, but pretty low stretch if I think about it now. But taut line hitch, and not really a taut line. It was 2 wraps under, and then 2 half hitches over top of each other, kind of like a clove hitch above. And it never rolled. It never got tight. I never experienced trouble with that until I actually tried the taut line later, and that would always creep and roll, which I found interesting. And then come to find out later, 3-strand rope, it doesn't do that on, which I've actually tested, and it's true. It's really ironic or interesting. You tie a taut line hitch on 3-strand rope, and it doesn't move. You tie it on braided line, and it creeps. It's really weird. But that's closed system. A snap. I don't even know if I think I might have I had a beaner with a snap, but it wasn't a locking. It was just a screw gate, and one, and a lanyard that went. It was a cable cord that ran over the hook would hang forward, and I would pass it behind the rear of the lanyard, and then over top and through the ring, and it was like a sheet bend basically on my D ring, and I could shorten and lengthen it. That was my lanyard. And you climbed up and avoided any cutting on the way up. If you had to, you had to, and you tied in once you got to the top. There was no, and that's just how, as long as you got 3 points of contact, you're good.
Yeah, it was pretty standard.
And that seems like that, you hear that from a lot of people. And I never, I didn't at the time never thought of it as risky or fearful because I was just trained that way and did it. I'd feel more nervous about it doing now, but I'm a little older too. Yeah. But it was a belt, a lanyard, and then of course a scabbard with a handsaw. I had secateurs too. Actually, I was trained with secateurs right from the start. So little snippling and, but changed. And I do not know what kind of harness it was. It was a butt squeezer. Like it didn't have any individual leg straps. It just had the basket for 2 Ds and 2 Ds. So 4 Ds. And I remember finding a spreader shackle. I don't know what time. It was somewhere early on and thinking, wow, that was cool. Because it took a lot of pressure off the squeeze. Right. And I thought I'd really made it. I was fancy once I found a spreader shackle.
I think it was probably a Weaver saddle. It was a butt strap saddle, canvas, low leather. Yeah. Didn't use 3-strand, but we had New England safety blue, but before the high V,
right?
Because it was, you could have any color of rope you wanted as long as it was white.
Yeah.
And then it was just the snap was just it wasn't a locking snap. Nope. It was captive eye snap.
Yeah.
We won, and that went on both the rings.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't like that and then my lanyard was just the Brannick style lanyard with the hooks, so that was New England safety blue too. And then, it was like that, I don't know, for terrible long. They didn't let me climb a lot the first couple of years. They needed someone to branch manage. So I was a branch manager and a turf groomer. And then, I think from there, it went into right on the advent of then you could get orange rope. You could get
I remember
that was
when the orange
big deal.
It was, and I got some right away.
Because now our climbing lines and rigging lines looked different. That was a big deal. Yeah. And then from there, then the split tail rolled in pretty quickly, but it was still. I learned to taunt line, but moved to the Blakes reasonably and then carabiners came in with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I climbed on that butt strap saddle for a while, and then moved into probably the Bosun seat, like the Arbor Master series, the first ones that came out. And that climbed in a Bosun seat saddle for a very long time. And then it was sort of the evolution up through into the split tails, into the. I didn't really like leg strap saddles until I got into like the ergovations, and then that got a little bit. I'm still climbing an ergovation to this day. But it was an interesting progression. My lanyards got longer. I still use about a 20-foot lanyard. Like it's basically a second climbing system for me. It models it's a Michiokon with it's just basically a short climbing system with a hitch climber pulley. Yeah. And it's evolved, and I don't carry a lot. But it's interesting thinking back on those days and how I was fortunate to get in right on that cusp of change. Short of 3-strand, I didn't have to deal with 3-strand. We had 3-strand rigging lines around, but I didn't have to climb on it.
Yeah, I never did either.
And I didn't have to get into the sisal rope or anything like that, the manila. Yeah. But and then I was, like I said, right on that. So I learned what would now be considered old school, but was the school forever, like from the 70s through the 80s. That's what it was. And then all that change came on.
Well, really the only change going, if you go way back, was the rope construction, almost. And then snaps, because I remember guys talking back when I started that they would tie right into the belt. They didn't even have a snap. Mm-hmm. So that was already quite an advancement, was snaps and or captive eye carabiners, which was already considerably more than just the snap. Mm-hmm. But a lot of guys still, even when I started, were just tying into the 2D rings with a clove hitch or with the bowline.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I was like I said, I was fortunate in that my brother and his friend of mine, Pete, had worked other companies, but they had worked with Bartlett. They'd worked with my dad, and were a little bit advanced. I mean, I always wore a hard hat. I always had the safety gear.
That was something, again. That was one thing.
I mean, it was the classic, didn't stay on your head, and the chin strap was atrocious.
I look back.
But I always had a hard hat and safety glasses, I can say.
We never did. I was trained totally with that. I look back. I saw some pictures going back to, the early 90s, and I couldn't believe it. It wasn't until like 93, 94, 92, 93 when I first... Tim Art was probably the first one I really got turned on to, and Ken and Rip too with Arbor Master, that they wear that all the time, and I did after that, but before that I got photos of me with the bandana on. That's it.
Yeah, I always did that. I always had that fortunate, and we never spiked for pruning. Always only removals. They were pretty good on that. That was a Bartlett thing rolling through from the 80s. So I was fortunate that the skill level I got into at the time was relatively high across the board. So I was fortunate that way. I didn't have to learn too many bad habits.
It's funny you say that, because the company I started at had recently attended, like right soon when I started, Shigo seminar. It was 88, 89, and they had taken it. I couldn't go because I was too new. And they'd already started, and they already had been reading Shigo stuff, so they had banned spurs. Period. Mm-hmm. So my introduction was spurs are bad. So we never used any spurs. And it wasn't until later when I went to a different company and like that I thought they were something wrong with them that they even had spurs. And they only used them for removal, but they did use them, and I realized, well, this is actually a great tool. But the company I was at was so adamant that they were bad, we didn't even use them for removals. And I remember went to work at one company, and I heard the guys talking, they hired this guy that apparently doesn't ever even use spurs for removals. Because nobody did that. And I'm realizing, like, and it did help me climb. You learn to climb a little better, right? Mm-hmm. But I had this weird reputation because I was this weirdo that didn't use spurs for removals. But it wasn't my choice. It was just the way I was trained.
Yeah.
And of course I did learn to use spurs.
We didn't really even like, we had spurs, and I never had to like paint wounds, but I knew like the stuff was still around. I knew what why that clip was on the outside of your saw scabbard, and why I knew why that was. And I don't think I ever remember painting a wound, but it wasn't, I probably just got past that. But I mean, the stuff was still around. Like my dad had the cans and everything around, and my brother, I don't think they ever painted. When my brother started on his own, he was pretty advanced for his time and he very early on did some Shigo seminars with Alex when he started the business, and so he was pretty advanced that way. So I was fortunate that like I said, that when I came in, the tools and what I was taught to use was the best we had at the time, within reason. Because it just, like, we'd use carabiners, but they were non-locking, so you would just use two of them, and then you would oppose the gates. Yep. That made it safer.
That was already an advancent off the snap.
But we were lowering off of a rescue figure 8 for rigging.
Yeah,
like
we did too.
That was the thing. And
we did too.
And then we had a bollard, and then we had all the versions of the porter wrap.
Yeah. From
the boat anchor to the porter crap to what became the version 3, which is what most people would recognize now.
Yeah, that's right.
We had the bollard we had was made, somebody welded it together. It was fine. We got a GRCS when Greg first came out with them, like 2000, 2001 in Baltimore. In fact, because he numbers every one of them, we have 54.
Oh, yeah.
We have number 54. We have two of them. We have like number 136 something and 2 something, or 2 something. So we got that. So I was always fortunate that where I was at. And then it would have been the first Arbor Master course I took would have been 98, 97, 98, somewhere in there. And that was my brother realizing that...
It was 96, I think that was.
My brother realizing that, he and Pete could only take me so far. Like, because they knew there was new stuff coming out, so they're like, well, we'll send Tony. Well, mostly because I don't want to say expendable, but Pete and Ben was doing the sales and climbing, and Pete was doing all the climbing. Like, I was the guy you could send for 4 days, and they could still get work done.
Right.
And I think I had originally signed up to do like a seminar in Savannah, Georgia. Something happened and I didn't end up going. So I ended up going to a 4-day training in Reston, Virginia, where I met Scott. Oh. And then Keith Kanzler was down there, if you remember Keith. And another person we need to call and get on.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then that led to the whole thing. Like, and then, of course, competing at the North American Finals in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, where I met Peter Donzelli for the first time, and Dan Krause. And I remember all that. And then just that straight line through getting into I can remember going to climbing jamborees before the Masters changeover. When the work climb was and you started from the ground.
Yep.
I never competed like that, but I watched.
I
saw them.
I did.
And then the first time I competed would have been 98-ish, 99. And it had already slipped over to what we now know as the Masters Challenge.
Yeah, basically the work climb was a mini Masters.
It was, you started from the ground and you worked your way up.
You only had 5 throws. That's where that carried over into the Masters.
Well, I remember they didn't have a throw bag. It was you rope advanced up the tree.
Well, you could use a throw bag if you knew how, but my first international I didn't never seen. Well, I knew it was, but I scoffed it off. And I ended up getting third. That was my first time I ever placed international in throw line, like some fluke. But when it came to the work climb, I was on. It was a big cottonwood. I was in Bismarck, North Dakota. I went to that international and I competed there. And I saw Ken and Bob both use that tool with an extreme skill. And it was like, okay, this obviously is faster and better. And,
right.
And that was when I realized, okay, I need to dig in and learn this thing. But because I remember I was so frustrated because I knew I could climb the top of that cottonwood, but I had to stay tied in all the time. So what I would have done is thrown a monkey's fist up, got over, clipped in. I wouldn't have tied a knot. I would have just humped my way up to the first limb, climbed up, and done it again or jumped to the next branch. That one was big enough. I would have had to have done another couple monkeys, but I would have ascended without tying the hitch on.
Right.
I would have just pulled myself, climbed up. Until I got in the branch and climbed up, I would have been up in a couple minutes. But because I couldn't do that, I had to stay tied all the time. And I couldn't throw high enough with just a monkey's fist. I got up on that first limb and then trying to figure out how to stay tied in. And I couldn't fit my lanyard around the trunk. And I couldn't put it underneath me because that wasn't allowed. And then I couldn't undo my climbing system. And you're sitting there just absolutely bamboozled as to what to do. And angry and frustrated and embarrassed. And then you watch, they throw it like to the ideal tie-in point and first one shot pull a rope up there. It's like, well, what the heck?
Yeah. You gotta learn that.
Yeah. And and even up until that point thinking, oh yeah, I got a chance at this. And then realizing I need to learn some things.
I can I didn't. I'm not saying I didn't free climb or the 3-point contact, but I always really, really enjoyed working with rope in a tree. So it was, to me, I didn't mind throwing it up and then tying my knot again. I enjoyed that process of it.
And I don't know if I didn't. I don't think it was a rebellion thing. It was how I was showing.
And I had certainly would throw your knot up. And then just pull yourself up. But generally, I would just tie a hitch. I don't think I did it out like they made me. I just enjoyed tying knots, and I enjoyed working the rope. I enjoyed that when I was younger, and it didn't hurt as much, that body thrust.
And I never thought nothing of holding it and tying it.
Right.
And then if I needed to stop to cut something or whatever. That was always a big selling feature. Or I remember the old timers that would teach me would be like, you got to know how to tie a knot with one hand.
Exactly.
All I need is you tie it with one hand. That blanket you can't do that. Exactly. So that was the reason not to use it right there.
It was selection criteria.
Which there is something to be said, that you can tie, and you literally can tie that.
There's also something to be said for just using your lanyard too.
Yeah.
Not falling out of the tree. Yeah. But it was fun. Now I see a lot of climbers coming in and they have like rock or ice experience, so they're coming in with a higher skill level, and it's good. I know there's less people falling out of trees, and I wouldn't start anybody where I started. Although when I train, I insist they know how to tie a Blake's hitch and understand the basic system, because if all else fails, you need a piece of rope. To this day, I will use the tail end of my rope, bring back to my saddle, just tie into my saddle into a Blake's hitch for a secondary positioning point. I'll still do that all the time.
The third lanyard.
In the widespready trees or just a reposition. I do that a great deal, and I've been known, like, there's every once in a while when I'm climbing more regularly, I'll just strip it all down and I will just go back to a carabiner, a locking carabiner now, of course, and just thread it through and tie it off with an anchor hitch and then put a Blake's hitch on and just climb like that. Just take it all back to the beginning, because why not?
Yeah.
And then slowly add things back in. I don't climb near as much as I used to, which is fine. But yeah, it's funny how it's changed, and you think how the thread of that, the climbing techniques and how things came along is interesting. I was fortunate to be there when it was new, because it was an interesting time to be a climber, because things increased really rapidly, like in 10 years. Went from a system that climbers had been system a climber had been using with very few variations for 20, 30 years, and then in 5 years it just was totally different.
Even
with the split tail and the
and the other thing that coincided with it was the internet.
Yeah,
the internet genesis was almost matched that progression, and I must have had something to do with it. Even, I would think, because you could see things so much more quickly and learn things, and now it's like you can find anything you want so easily, right? And you definitely see more people coming in with a higher level of overall knowledge, It might be basic, it might be unrefined, but they just have a bit more understanding and just more available.
Right.
Just social media, like
right.
you look at if you want to find tree stuff on Instagram, you start looking, you're going to find, or Facebook or YouTube, whatever. Like, you're going to find a lot of stuff to look at.
I think sometimes I just find it frustrating, especially as a trainer, because and I always applaud people trying to increase their skill set and do better, but they'll do things, show things on like YouTube, and it's like, we've been down this road before. It's not going to work. Just trust me. And they don't. And it's like, but I'm not sitting here saying I'm the end all and be all, but it's like, we tried the unsecure foot locking, or when, just when you're coming down after you tie in the pull line, just rappel down the rigging line. It's like, we've been down these roads before. Yeah. Can you please just trust me on this? And most people do. I get it. But it's funny. And I think I've said it before, we've talked about it. It's not like everything, like when we started from where we started from with just a very basic system and a rope snap, and then using a carabiner, that change solved the problem because you couldn't roll out of it.
Right.
And then, like I said, the taunt line hitch worked really well on certain ropes, but then when we switched to the 16 strands, it didn't work so well. It wanted to roll, so we had to do a knot. So
and
Blake's hitch.
With the stop knot, it got tight.
So then we had to do the Blake's hitch, and then when we realized with the split tail we could use a rope of a different diameter. Yeah. Well, then we could get into the prusik. So everything solved a problem moving forward. Especially
when it comes to efficiency or ease, the knot would move when you wanted it to move. It would move very subtly.
Right.
It would grab when you wanted. And it was kind of the whole thing of Tree Actions was a way we wanted to connect people with. We originally started connecting some of our instructional team with our past instructors. And it very quickly moved into just, why not let other people might want to hear about the history and people's journeys in arboriculture. And hence the Human Forestry podcast was born. Mm-hmm. And we've really enjoyed bringing it to you all. And we've enjoyed everyone who's taken part. Mm-hmm. And we look forward to another season. We got a list of people that we've reached out to, and we look forward to the next suite of conversations that we're going to have in 2025.
Mm-hmm. Season 3.
Season 3. Here we are. And with that, we like to wish you a happy holidays. And wish you all the best. And thanks for listening in to Tony and Dwayne reminisce a little bit about 2024 and maybe just give you a little background onto who we are and a little bit about Tree Actions, its origins, and the people behind it. One last thing I'd like to say also is, this is a what would we call it? A philanthropic endeavor. We're doing this. Climbing for love. I think it'd be a good motto or something like that, as my friend Billy Wild used to say, climbing for love. But we like it. We enjoy it. We're not. It's not a. We haven't. It's not a retirement plan. So it's not that. I want to diminish its value by saying we're not in it for profit, but we're not, and that's not to make it not a valuable program. But we really enjoy it, and we really value our guests' time. And anyone that takes the time to listen, thank you very much.
Yeah, can't say any better than that. Thank you for 2 great seasons. I'm looking forward to the next one and seeing where it goes from there. Every season's a little bit different. Every guest's a little bit different. And I'm just enjoying the ride.
And if you want to help us out at all, because like Tony said in the beginning, we do some kinds. We can become a Patreon. And we're looking to beef up the perks for Patreons. I don't know what we'll do yet.
Yeah, we'll figure something out.
There'll be something.
You never know. All righty.
Merry Christmas.